Okay, so let's dive right into this world of cannabinoids. You've sent over some really interesting research on CBD and CBN.
Right.
These are two compounds that are found in the cannabis plant, and I think a lot of our listeners probably already know about THC,
Yeah.
the part of marijuana that gets you high, but
Yeah.
CBD and CBN are
Different.
different. They're
Right.
non-psychoactive, so
Mhm.
no hazy effects or anything like that. But
Right.
the science is showing that they may have some real therapeutic benefits.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting because these compounds are just two out of over 100 cannabinoids that are found in cannabis. So
Wow.
it really shows how much we still have to learn about this plant and its potential.
Yeah, it's amazing. And even with all this research that's still ongoing, the FDA has already approved a CBD-based drug called Epidiolex,
Right.
and it's used to treat some severe seizure disorders like Dravet syndrome and Lennox-Gastaut syndrome.
Yeah.
And these are often resistant to other treatments, and they primarily affect children. So it's kind of a big deal to have this cannabis-derived medication available.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just epilepsy.
Yeah.
Researchers are looking into CBD for a whole range of conditions, from anxiety and chronic pain to addiction and even Parkinson's disease.
Mhm.
There's even research suggesting that CBD might help reduce cravings for opioids and other substances. So if that proves to be true, that could be a game changer, especially with the opioid epidemic that we're facing.
That's incredible to think about all the possibilities there. So
Yeah.
CBD is definitely getting a lot of attention these days, but there's another cannabinoid that's quietly making waves, and that's CBN.
Right.
And it's often called the sleepy cannabinoid because of its potential for helping with insomnia.
Exactly.
So what's the research showing on CBN so far?
Well, the research on CBN is still pretty limited compared to CBD.
Okay.
But what we're seeing so far is promising entry. Early studies are showing potential for pain relief,
Okay.
especially when it's combined with CBD.
Okay.
And here's where it gets really interesting. A study even hinted that CBN might have neuroprotective properties,
Wow.
potentially helping to delay the onset of ALS.
That's huge. ALS is such a devastating disease.
Yeah,
Any possible treatment avenue is worth exploring.
absolutely. But it is important to remember that this is just one study,
Right.
and much more research is needed to confirm these findings.
Okay, so both of these compounds seem to have a lot of potential, but how do they actually work in the body?
Mm,
I'm guessing it has something to do with the endocannabinoid system
you got it.
or the ECS.
Exactly.
Right.
Both CBD and CBN interact with your ECS, which is a complex network of receptors
Okay.
that helps regulate all sorts of functions in your body.
Right.
Sleep, mood, pain. The ECS is involved in all of that.
So it's like the body's internal control system making sure everything's running smoothly.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
Now, CBD and CBN interact with the ECS in slightly different ways.
Okay.
CBD mainly interacts with CD2 receptors,
Okay.
which are mostly found in your immune system and peripheral tissues.
Mm.
CBN, on the other hand, can bind to both CB1 and CB2 receptors,
Okay.
similar to THC,
Okay.
but with much milder effects.
Okay. So they both work with the ECS, but they have different strategies
Yeah.
for interacting with those receptors.
Right.
That makes sense.
And this difference in how they bind might explain why they have such distinct effects on the body.
Exactly. And understanding how they each interact with the ECS, it becomes even more fascinating when we consider how they work together.
Okay, working together.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the entourage effect, right?
Right.
Where the different compounds in cannabis work synergistically,
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting.
especially with CBD and CBN. There's research suggesting that when taken together, they can actually boost each other's benefits. For example, you mentioned CBN and sleep earlier. One study found that CBN, when combined with THC, helped rats sleep longer.
Wait, so CBN and THC, but we were talking about CBN and CBE.
Right.
And if CBN comes from THC breaking down, does that mean it could still show up on a drug test?
Those are great questions to answer the first one. Yes. That study looked at CBN with THC, but it's important to remember that research on CBN is still in its early stages, and we need more studies, especially in humans, to fully understand its effects, both alone and with other cannabinoids like CBD.
So there's a lot more to learn, especially about how CBN works with CBD. What about the drug test question?
Right, that's important to address. While CBN forms as THC breaks down, it does so into a different compound. So consuming CBN in isolation shouldn't cause you to fail a drug test. However, if you're using a full-spectrum CBD product that contains trace amounts of THC, including CBN, then there's a chance it could show up.
That makes sense. So it's really important to know what's in the products you're using and where they're sourced from.
Absolutely, and this brings us back to the entourage effect. It's not just about CBD and CBN. There are other compounds in cannabis like terpenes that can also contribute to the overall effects.
Terpenes, those are the things that give cannabis its distinct smell, right? Like how some strains smell citrusy and others more earthy.
Exactly. But terpenes do more than just provide aroma. They also interact with your body and can influence the effects of cannabinoids. So when you have a full spectrum product with a variety of cannabinoids and terpenes, they all work together, potentially creating a more balanced and effective experience.
That's really fascinating. It's like they all have their roles to play, and when they work together, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about potential benefits, but what about the risks? Are there any side effects or dangers associated with CBD or CBN?
Both CBD and CBN are generally considered safe, especially when compared to THC. However, like any substance, they can have side effects with CBD. The most common ones are things like dry mouth, drowsiness, and changes in appetite. It can also interact with certain medications, so it's crucial to talk to your doctor before using it, especially if you're taking any other medications.
So just because it's derived from a plant doesn't mean it's a free pass to mix it with anything.
Right. It's always best to err on the side of caution and get professional advice. As for CBN, the research on its long-term effects is still quite limited. But since it is a breakdown product of THC, some experts believe it might share a similar safety profile, meaning it would also be considered relatively safe. However, more research is definitely needed.
Okay, so being informed and talking to your doctor is key. Now, I'm curious about the research behind some of the specific claims we've been discussing. For example, we talked about CBD potentially helping with anxiety. What does the science actually say?
There's definitely a lot of interest in CBD for anxiety. For example, one study found that CBD helped reduce anxiety in people with social anxiety disorder during a simulated public speaking task. And another study showed that CBD helped reduce anxiety symptoms in patients with post-traumatic stress disorder.
So it's not just a feeling, there's actual research showing it can impact anxiety levels in different situations.
Right, but it's also important to note that most of the research on CBD and anxiety has been done in small studies, and more research is needed to confirm these findings and to determine optimal dosages.
Okay, so promising, but more research is needed. What about CBD for pain?
For pain, one study found that applying CBD topically significantly reduced pain and inflammation in rats with arthritis. And another study, this one in humans, found that a combination of CBD and THC was effective in reducing pain and muscle stiffness in patients with multiple sclerosis.
That's interesting. So topical CBD might be good for localized pain, and combining it with THC could help with more chronic conditions.
It speaks to the need to consider different forms of administration and how cannabinoids might work together.
Now let's circle back to CBN and sleep. Besides that one study with rats, is there any other evidence to support its potential for sleep?
The research on CBN and sleep is still quite limited, but there are some interesting observations. For instance, CBN is often found in cannabis strains, known for their sedative effects, like indica strains.
So while we don't have a ton of clinical studies yet, there's anecdotal evidence and traditional knowledge suggesting CBN might be helpful for sleep.
Right, and it's worth noting that some researchers believe CBN might work synergistically with other sleep-promoting compounds found in cannabis, like the terpene marcin, which is known for its relaxing effects.
So it's back to that entourage effect again. It seems like that's a key concept for understanding how cannabis works as a whole.
It really is, and it highlights the need to look beyond individual compounds and to consider the complex interactions between them.
Okay, so we've explored the research, the potential benefits, and the risks. Now let's talk about the practicalities with all these CBD and CBN products popping up. How do you know what to look for?
That's a great question. It can be overwhelming with so many options available. First and foremost, look for products that have been third-party lab tested. This means an independent lab has verified the cannabinoid content purity and the absence of contaminants.
So you want to see a certificate of analysis or COA to confirm the product is what it says it is.
Exactly. It's all about transparency. Also be wary of companies that make outlandish health claims if something sounds too good to be true. It probably is. Stick with companies that are transparent about their sourcing and manufacturing processes and that rely on evidence-based information.
So do your research, read reviews, and choose wisely.
Exactly. And remember, dosage is also important. It can vary depending on your individual needs, the severity of your condition, and the specific product you're using.
That makes sense. There's no one-size-fits-all approach, so start low and go slow, right?
Exactly. And if you have any doubts or concerns, always consult with your healthcare provider.
They can help you figure out the right dosage, potential interactions with other medications, and whether CBD or CBN is right for you.
Precisely.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here now. I think it's time to tackle the legal side of things. The legal status of CBD and CBN can be pretty confusing, right? It seems like the rules are constantly changing.
You're not wrong. It's a complex landscape, and the regulations can vary from state to state and even at the federal level.
So where do things stand right now?
At the federal level, hemp-derived CBD products that contain less than 0.3% THC are legal, thanks to the 2018 Farm Bill.
Okay, so that's a green light for hemp-derived CBD federally, but what about CBN?
CBN is a bit trickier because it's often derived from THC, which is still federally illegal. However, some states have legalized both recreational and medical marijuana, which means CBN products derived from marijuana are legal within those states.
So it's essential to be aware of your state-specific laws regarding CBD and CBN?
Absolutely. And it's worth noting that even in states where CBD is legal, there are still regulations around labeling, marketing, and how it can be sold.
It's a lot to keep track of, but it sounds like the most important thing is to do your research, be aware of the laws in your area, and choose products from reputable sources.
That's a great summary. Now let's shift gears and talk about the future of CBD and CBN research. What's on the horizon?
Yes. What are some of the exciting areas that scientists are exploring?
One area of intense interest is the potential of CBD and CBN for neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Early research hints that these cannabinoids might have neuroprotective properties and could possibly slow the progression of these diseases.
That's incredible given how devastating these diseases are. Any potential treatment avenue is worth investigating.
Absolutely. Another area of focus is the potential of CBD and CBN for cancer treatment. Some studies suggest they might help inhibit the growth of cancer cells and reduce the harsh side effects of chemotherapy.
Wow, so they're looking into CBD and CBN for some of the most challenging health conditions out there. What about research on their effects for general well-being?
Researchers are also exploring how CBD and CBN might contribute to overall health and well-being. For example, there are studies looking into their potential for reducing inflammation, boosting immune function, improving sleep quality, and enhancing cognitive function.
It's amazing to think about the wide range of potential benefits they might offer.
It really is, and as research continues, we're likely to uncover even more fascinating insights into their therapeutic potential. But it's important to remember that research takes time, and we should be cautious about overhyping any potential benefits until we have solid scientific evidence.
Right. It's all about staying informed and making decisions based on the best available evidence.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the science of CBD and CBN to their potential benefits, risks, and the legal landscape as we wrap up. Is there anything else you think our listeners should keep in mind as they continue to explore the world of cannabinoids?
I think the most important thing is to remember that this is just the beginning of our understanding of cannabis and its potential. We've focused on CBD and CBN today, but there are over 100 other cannabinoids out there, many of which we know very little about.
So there's a whole universe of cannabinoids just waiting to be explored.
Exactly. And who knows what amazing discoveries are waiting to be made. Perhaps there are cannabinoids out there with even more potent therapeutic effects than CBD or CBN. Or maybe we'll discover new ways to combine these compounds to create even more effective treatments.
That's really exciting to think about. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have, and I think it's important to approach this field with a sense of curiosity and open-mindedness, recognizing that cannabis is a complex plant with a rich history and vast potential.
It's a call to continue researching and exploring, to move beyond the stigma and embrace the possibilities.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of CBD and CBN.
It's been a pleasure exploring these fascinating compounds with you.
I've learned so much. I hope our listener feels the same way.
I hope so too. And remember, the world of cannabinoid research is constantly evolving. So stay curious and keep learning.
And as always, consult with your doctor to make informed decisions about your health. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into CBD and CBN. Until next time, stay curious.